Welcome to Your Music Saved Us, where two friends blast ourselves into the past to relive and recontextualize the alternative Christian music we grew up listening to in the 1990s. My name is Jay.
I'm Clifton.
And Clifton, what are we, talking about this week? Because we don't actually have this is a different type of show. I guess I'll say it that way.
Yeah. We have a special guest with us, Sean McCauley from Rainy Days. Hey, Sean.
What up?
So, Sean, you were the lead singer for Rainy Days.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from?
We were all from Huntington Beach in the very beginning. And there was a lot of music going on at the time. If I went into a list of all of the bands that people are familiar with from specifically Huntington Beach, it would probably take like 10, 15 minutes. It would launch a whole different conversation. But bands like X and Pennywise and TSOL and Bad Religion, Angry Samoans, Social Distortion, any West Coast punk rock had a connection to Huntington Beach at the time. Yeah. So it was totally unsurprising that we fell into music. What was surprising is that we were any good at it.
So you came up in this scene along with a bunch of other bands. I assume around the same time. Were you involved in any other bands before Rainy Days?
Yep. My first show I ever went to was one I played. We opened up for Saved. Saved was the headliner, and they went on to be the Supertones many years later.
We did an episode on Supertones.
Oh yeah, those are all friends of mine. The singer married a girl that I dated at the time.
Wow.
It's all very incestuous. Like the Orange County punk rock and especially Christian music, like all of that alternative Christian music. It's all very, very incestuous. Everyone knew everyone.
Good to know that's as incestuous as things like Elephant Six Records or something like that.
Yeah. So how did? And maybe if we want to go back even farther than this, we can. But how did you guys form Rainy Days? Like, where did it come from?
Dude, it was a side project of a side project. So, like you're familiar already with the idea of bloodshed being involved, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened was those were all real close friends of mine, ours, and they wanted to do a coffee shop band because a lot of bands were playing in coffee shops. It's the early '90s, right? Coffee shops are like everywhere. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like Starbucks was like new. Everyone had like a mom and pop coffee shop, and they would have open mics and such. Yeah. And so we wanted to riff on that, and we made a band called Decaf, and it was specifically to make fun of coffee shop music, and it was this cheesy, loungy crap that we could do.
If I tag along tonight with you, I'm through with the sun, and I could get so romantic tonight.
And it really was ridiculous, but it was also the Bloodshed guys all moved over one seat instrumentally. So Sean Stopnick played drums, kind of poorly, but whatever. And John Cottrell played guitar amazingly. Like his big musical chairs bit there was he played as well as he could instead of just hardcore, which is what he did for Bloodshed. And it was way better than we wanted it to be. And it got kind of popular. after that side project thing, Jason Fleetwood said to me, hey, let's go with John Cottrell across the street, and we're going to play crappy Green Day punk rock. And we know you're into punk rock, so come sing. And okay. And so we did that. And so it was like we were making fun of everything with the Decaf band, and then we were making fun of everything with the Rainy Days band. But then again, like accidentally, we were all right. And when we got signed, they actually made us kick John Cottrell out because he wasn't a drummer, and so like he wasn't good enough. And they're like, get someone else, and we got Feltman, and that's how that went.
How'd you know Feltman?
I didn't. Fleetwood knew Feltman from high school, Calvary High School.
Okay.
And so, what age were you at this time? Were you still in high school, right out of high school? When was this?
It's all very fuzzy, but like, I was probably 14.
Oh wow!
I was probably 14 when we started writing music. Yeah, and then about 14, I think. Yeah, just babies.
Yeah. I was still listening to Mariah Carey at 14, so good on you. You know, but then again, I'm from Wichita Falls, Texas. So
I hear you. It's funny. I grew up listening to like Bon Jovi and Metallica and stuff, and then Mom asked the youth pastor at the church, "Is it okay if my son listens to all this stuff?" And he's like, "No, that's devil's rock." And so she threw away all of my records, and I came home. I'm like, "Where's my music?" And she's like, "Oh, I threw it away because it's devil's rock." And I'm like, you don't get to do that. Are you insane? And there wasn't even a conversation. She just went straight to the dumpster and got it all out. And the irony is that from then on, like, I was like, I'm just going to listen to whatever I want because obviously I have the power. So I started listening to like Bad Religion and Dead Kennedys and yeah.
Yeah. You tested your boundaries there and won.
No, they were tested for me.
Yeah. I went through a phase where I got rid of a bunch of music too, but I'm not going to talk about that because it's embarrassing.
Yeah, set it on fire for sure.
I did not set anything on fire. Oh my god.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so we understand.
That is just dramatic.
Well, you know, that's part of it. So,
like when all those dudes in the Midwest got angry at Robert De Niro for saying "screw the presidents," they're like,
oh yeah,
filming themselves like lighting his picture on fire. I'll tell you what I think of you.
Exactly. Did Rainy Days tour outside of the West Coast at all?
Yeah, we went out to Bushnell and back for the Cornerstone show.
Okay.
And
awesome.
And we did when we toured twice. Once out there, and then we toured all the way up to Skamania County for Tom Fest. Tom Fest was cool too, up there near Seattle.
Do you remember what year you went to Cornerstone?
Yeah, that was 96. I remember because that was the year that I graduated high school. And it was really neat because a lot of kids were like, "Are you taking a senior trip? Are you doing anything?" Like, "Oh, I'm going camping." And I'm like, "I'm going on tour with my band."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was like real. It wasn't like I've got a band and we're gonna get in a bus and like have a couple shows. It was like, no, we were on a label and they got an RV for us and everything. It was super cool.
Oh wow!
And so I took my high school yearbook, which is right over there, and I got one of those editions that the popular kids get, you know, where you like put the extra pages in the back because you know that many people. And I saved that just for the tour. And so I got like everyone that recorded the album, all of the band members, of course, and then fans. Like at our merch booth, my high school yearbook was there and the fans signed that. It was really pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I guess I'm so unpopular I didn't even know that you could get extra pages. Right. No one offered me that option.
So, well, you mentioned the label. Take us back. How did you guys get signed to Alarma? Like, how did you, I guess maybe even before that, how did you go from just starting the band to getting to the point where you could record a record and all that stuff?
A lot of it was just hand-me-down stuff. Like Sean Stopnick, he had a leg up because his dad worked for Black and White World. You guys know him? Black and White, they were real strong.
It's like Blonde Vinyl Band, right?
Precisely so.
Back in the day.
Good job. Okay. And you know, they were all right. They were rock. They were rock, whatever. Anyway, so he had all of the equipment. And so we got to screw around with like a mixer and a half stack and a head and all that stuff. So we got to learn on that. And so we were always doing music. And shows, like I said, my first show was a show I played. Like they just had a band. And it's like, well, what do you do once you have a band? Well, then you make songs. So what do you do once you make songs? You get good at songs. What do you do when you good songs? Well, you put them all together and then you play them in front of people. Oh, okay. How do we do that? Well, you just call this guy and then and you know, one day one of the bands sticks. I think it's probably been done that way since the beginning of time. But we got signed because, what do you do when you have shows? Well, you get fans. What do you do when you have fans? You make a demo tape. That's just what you do. And so we did that. And then the janitor at the label, I think her name's Shannon, she was listening to it on her Walkman, and she was cleaning the A&R rep's room. And he's like, "What are you listening to?" And she goes, "These guys." And he took the tape out and he put it on his boombox on his desk, and he's like, "Call them." And that's that.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Lucky.
So I said a very not nice thing about the demo in our episode on Homecoming.
It's understandable. It's warranted. Well, let's not be crazy. I mean, like I said to you in email, I think we recorded it for like $200. Like it was money that we were able to make as teenagers on T-shirts that we sold. You know what I mean? And it was recorded, I think, in 2 days in Riverside by a guy who it was really well known. He recorded a lot of people. He had a Dr. Pepper thing, I remember, which I thought was weird at the time. I'm like, why are you a fan of a soft drink? That makes no sense to me. But anyway, we recorded that demo and I loved it. I was like, this is an album. I don't know why we're calling it a demo. It's punk rock, right? Like, it's not supposed to sound nice. And everything was live. Like, we didn't do like just a mic over the band. Like, everyone got to do takes. But for the most part, it was everything I wanted in a record. all the flash and pizzazz that went on the 1996 album, I personally feel like that was not us. That was like Louise, like putting the spin on it, double the vocals and like do this and do that. Like, why? That's not what we do. Like, just do it. It'll sound better. Like, it'll sound like you want it to sound is what it'll sound like.
Yeah, and I agree. It's punk rock. Why does it need to be, studio quality?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when we were preparing for, I don't remember, one of our episodes, I was doing a lot of reading about recording at the time, and there was a lot of mention of Nirvana's first big album. I forget which one it was.
Bleach.
Yes, very good. And talking about how that was really a stepping stone for a lot of bands to be able to record, because all of a sudden you didn't have to have pristine studio quality.
Well, yeah,
recordings.
But I mean, look at the stuff that was coming out of UK and the US, like in 1978. Yes. Look at Iggy Pop. Look at
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but my point in saying that was that makes no sense to me, because all the music I've ever listened to didn't have good recordings.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, what's really cool about it, in my opinion, is that like the worse the recording is, the more like one-off it is, then the better the content has to be. Like, yes, I mean, if William S. Burroughs writes a poem on a bar napkin, you're not going to whine and moan because it's not on like a hardback book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
You shine it all up, just about anything sounds good. That's like, you said that you wanted to ask about the clean channel thing. That was our big gripe. Because it's like, back then, if you liked punk rock, people would be like, it all sounds the same. And be like, no, there's a huge difference between no effects and no use for a name. And it's like, but is there? Like, the guitar tones are pretty much exactly the same. Fat Mike is producing both the same way he learned from Mr. Brett at Epitaph. The Fat Records band definitely they all have a sound, and all of them are distorted. All of them have 3-part harmonies, and I was upset because I'm like, that is not what punk rock is for. Punk rock is for doing art the way that you want it to be. Right. And when you all come out sounding very similar to one another, you're putting a bad face on us.
Okay, you got discovered kind of in a cool way by, she was basically the janitor, right? And then the tape gets put on the boombox, so they give you a call. And how long between that and then actually recording Homecoming?
God, that's a good question. I don't think very long. I think it was the same year. So like they came to see a show that we played. I think it wasn't even a show. It was like a Bible study at Jason and Jason's high school, because it was a Christian high school, right? They had like a youth group every Wednesday night or Thursday, and they're like, hey, we're going to play my Bible study. It's like, okay. Like, we did that all the time, so it was no big deal, right? And then these two real tall old dudes, older guys, they were like probably my age now, our age, but like, right, they seemed old, and they were standing in the back, and they wanted to talk to us after, and they were like, that was really, really good. And then John Cottrell went home, and they're like, he sucks, though. We gotta get rid of it. And we're like, oh. It didn't matter there, because John's a physicist now. Like, he walked way the hell away from music, like, entirely, which is kind of sad, because I've never seen a more intuitive guitarist. He really knew his stuff. But yeah, he didn't care. He didn't like the music, and he definitely didn't want to play drums, really. Like, the last thing he wanted was to like go on tour with Rainy Days. And we already had Feltman in the band as a guitarist, and he was so, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh no, he actually plays drums. Like, well, why do we have John on the drums? And I'm like, let me hear him. And he was like way good. Like, oh, okay, well, that's much better. Glad these two guys came in with their opinion.
Wait, so so when you say Bible study, do you mean like a youth group wide Bible study, or do you mean like a house Bible study?
No, it was on the campus of their high school, and they had like a great big like.
Because I pictured in my head like a house Bible study. I'm like, that's a lot of effort to go to play for 15 people.
Well, we did that too.
Sure.
I mean, that's largely what we did. We did lots of acoustic shows too. Like, we would just, because I play guitar well enough to be able to sing to it and write music. Mm-hmm. And so like I would take my guitar and Fleetwood would take his guitar, and we'd like sit down with friends and like put on a show.
Yeah. Cool.
We did shows all the time.
Nice. All right. I'm following the progression. So it's less than a year before you guys record. And how did they make all the decisions on like where you're going to record it and who's going to produce it and all that? Or do you guys get a say, or how does that work?
No, we didn't get any say in any of that. Okay. But I mean, we would have Luis was awesome. Like I talked a little crap earlier, but not on him. Like the production was good. His advice was good. I back it all. You know, it's not as us as it would have been without a producer, but he did a good job.
Right.
But no, we didn't get to choose Luis Garcia for you listening at home from Plank Eye, and we didn't get to choose the green room. But the green room. The green room was like, it's so sad that it's not around anymore and that no one knows about it, because having been there, it's like, what if you went and saw the Eiffel Tower and then one day there was no Eiffel Tower, and like 30 years later, like someone's like, you know, what's something you remember? You're like, the Eiffel Tower. And they're like, what? Explain it to me. And you do. And they're like, well, it sounds pretty cool. Anyway, like the green room was that amazing. It was really a sight to behold.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit on another episode. Like, it's pretty legendary place. Mm-hmm. And if you know, for us, we grew up in Texas, and so we're looking at stuff kind of out on the West Coast, and a large portion of all the albums we liked, you know, were recorded there.
I recorded the green room.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the Abbey Road Studios for that scene, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gene Eugene was like, he was the 1990s guy. Like he was like Dinosaur Jr. had a baby with Alice in Chains. Like he was that guy.
Did you get to have much interaction with him when you were recording?
He was there, but he didn't work on our record.
Right.
Like he provided the studio. He was in and out all the time. We talked with him. He's a pretty quiet guy. I got the impression that there were a lot of altered states of consciousness going on at the green room.
Really?
Like when you go in, like the first thing you see is the lobby, and it's like this tiki lounge with a bamboo wet bar. And, you know, you don't think anything of it at the time, but it's like, considering who you're recording, this is a weird thing to have right here. But right. I have zero doubts that some really lascivious, gnarly parties went down in the green room. Zero doubts in my mind.
Very interesting to learn.
Maybe it helps stuff make sense now in hindsight, but yeah, that's great.
It was super grungy, man. Like, I mean, not in a dingy way. Like it was very, very stylish. You don't usually hear about people talk about the green room that way, but that's like the first thing you see when you go in is like every room has a theme. There was like a billiard room for the crew and the band who wasn't recording or anything, where you could play pool, and it had 1950s like metal flake tile, like blue, with inlaid like Catholic saints on it. It was, the whole room was like a 1955 Chevy, and like it wasn't like 1950s diner. It wasn't that. Like it was like the car. Like I think it had like plush velvet curtains, and then the actual studio room was really dark. And like red tinted, and they had 3 1960s lamps on the wall, and there was always like a good 2.5 feet of cigarette smoke like sticking to the ceiling. Because I mean, you know, like Tokol, he smoked a pack a day. I had a 2-pack a day habit, and the other guys had one from time to time. You just like sit in there and get cancer all day. But it was super dark. Like it's the place where you could go in there with a terrible hangover and do a solid 12 hours of work, no problem. Like there was no light getting in there.
This is fascinating. In all the reading I've done about the green room, the only thing I've ever heard about it in detail is that it's not a good place to record drums, which is a weird thing.
I don't know about. I mean, I thought our drums came out okay. Like of all of the complaints I have, I mean, I'm not really big on. No, it sounded fine to me.
Yeah.
So, do we want to kind of, because you sent us some great notes, and I'd love to kind of go back through the album a little bit, but then I want to talk about, like, you know, how Rainy Days ended and stuff after that.
Whatever you like.
You want to go in that order? Does that work?
Sure, that's fine.
All right, let's jump in, and Clifton, you look like...
Well, before we get into individual songs, can we just ask you about the pre-songs, like these little short songs? Like, what's going on there?
We took nothing seriously.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I took the writing of the lyrics very seriously, but because I kind of had to, but even then, like, we were still just kids surfing and playing punk rock music, and the pre-songs, they were something to, like, get the audience laughing, like people being like, what goofy stuff are these guys doing, you know, like, what silliness is this, to just, like, make fun of the whole situation so that everyone's on the same page. And then it would be like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's like, oh, okay. Oh, they're serious, you know? And then we do another goofy little thing. And there are a couple live shows taped that can still be heard. And it's just ridiculousness all of the time. Jeff Jackway used to be like, save that clapping. Save that clapping. People would, after every song, people would applaud. He'd be like, save that clapping. Save that clapping.
All right, that makes the jump rope stuff and things make sense. Okay.
The jump rope thing was, I know that you wanted to go song by song, but, like, what that was we had this song and we were in the studio to do our demo, and we had an extra, like, 15 minutes or something like that. And they're like, oh no, that was the album. That's 15-minute song. But we had, like, an extra hour, and they're like, we have this one song, but, you know, you haven't even heard it yet. And I'm like, well, just lay it down. So they laid it down. And I went and I just made it up. And, like, as the song starts, and remember, I haven't heard it yet, right? Like, when I recorded that song, I had never heard it before. And so, like, da 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 da, I'm like, it sounds like a music box. And I started thinking of elementary school skipping rope, the girls, you know? I don't sing anything right there because I'm listening going, okay, all right, okay, that's how this song goes. And then I come in because that's when I felt I had a handle on it. It's all just made up.
Sean, I know I was critical of the album, but one, that's kind of the nature of our podcast, but also, like, oh my God, if there was stuff recorded that I did when I was, like, 15, 16, 17, like, I'll just say I'm thankful anything I was involved in does not seem to be documented from that time. So, like, yeah. So
yeah.
Acknowledging that everybody was, like, kids at that age, because... goodness.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the critical nature of your podcast. I think that's exactly how art should be treated. It should be measured, and it should be looked at, and it should be judged both subjectively and objectively, I think, so that we can make better music next time.
And part of it for us has been, in doing this, has been kind of trying to figure out, like, what we thought at the time and kind of unpacking that now and making sense of it for who we are now. And
you know, it's especially growing up in this very insular culture of Christianity, you know, and especially, you know, American evangelical Christianity. And as you survived the music purge, but I think probably Jay and I both, like, probably willfully submitted to it because we're from Texas, and, like, what else are we going to find anyway?
Yeah.
You know, like, there's not... The Christian music shop is an easier place to find music as another place, you know?
A lot of our fans told us, they're like, we didn't have a choice. Like, you were our Dead Kennedys because we had never heard of the Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I heard of the Dead Kennedys at some point, but I didn't hear them until after high school. You know?
Yeah, we actually just did an episode about Blaster the Rocket Boy or Man, or however you want to refer to that band, and I was kind of telling Clifton, like, it wasn't until later that I heard the Dead Kennedys and was like, oh, this is where Blaster gets it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, That's just how it was growing up, kind of in that culture.
It's that way in every culture.
It is, and part of what we're trying to unpack in all of this is how much influence this music had on us, because it's what we had, you know. And actually, there's something I want to ask you about. Maybe we can dive deep into it later on. But is this and it's probably not something you realized at the time, or maybe even have thought about since, is that these lyrics and this music has a huge impact on this whole swath of people out there. You know,
That's why I got out.
Yeah, understandable.
Dude, I got fan mail. The real moment came because it was like, these are my brothers, and we've been playing music a long time. We were just where we were playing really good music that I thoroughly believed in. None of the album. Like, I like the album. I sometimes listen to it, but the stuff that you guys haven't heard was so far superior. And it was right when we got there, it's like, oh, it's time to pack it up. And the reason was I got fan mail from a girl, and she was like 13 or 14, and she was asking me for theosophical advice about scripture. And I'm like, dude, this has gotten way out of control. Like, yeah. I am like a 17-year-old boy. I do not have this responsibility. It's not I should not have it. It's I do not have it. This is not mine.
Right. And that's the whole culture, is that like people were leaning on this stuff because it's what we, you know, it's what we had to understand the world and understand each other, you know, and that's, I can't imagine people learning that and continuing to exist in the industry. But I mean, not that I'm saying that morally, I'm saying like, that would have weighted me down so far, you know. It would have been an anchor on my
it wasn't funny anymore. Like it was cool until it wasn't.
Right.
And if, you know, if I had been a stalwart believer at that time, I would have had an entirely different reaction to it, which is, if you think about it, that's a little scary too. Like if Sean McCauley then had been like full bore traditional fundamentalist, then he would have kept on even more. Like, oh, I've got a microphone that teenagers are listening to. I can tell them my interpretation of the Old Testament is, and they're going to believe it, you know? I could be like a mega church founder today or some crap. Send me 1995.
Exactly. If that got into the wrong hands, can you imagine?
Right.
And I guarantee you it
I'm
has.
sure it has.
Yes. We just did an episode of the Newsboys.
They were on our label.
They were. Speaking of fun theological discussions, let's talk about the militant Christianity of Voyage.
So I'll give the short version of what I gave you in the email, which is just that we needed the promoters to understand without a doubt that we were a Christian band, so they would leave us alone, because a lot of the stuff that I sang was not at all. And so we needed to be like, look, we're flag waving Christians, just, you know, go back to your office and never mind, because it's noise to them. They don't want to hear it, you know? So they don't want to listen anymore, and they have to. So we would open with Wayo, and they would be satisfied and they would go away, and we could do the rest of our set. That's what that was.
Okay.
And it is a great song to start the album, though. I do love the way it like starts things off.
It's fun. Yeah, I mean, you know, we had a blast. It was a lot of fun to sing, because it's like right here, you know, way ya, like real good, like, you know, Freddie Mercury belt out, get the heart pumping. By the way, the opening lyric is I knew a girl, her name was Samantha, and she lived on the back of a bantha. Star Wars.
Oh, interesting.
On our demo tape, we actually put samples in from Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom, and Star Wars.
Yes. Okay, so why the can we call it cynical or offhanded ChaChaCha for ChaChaCha? This Jay took this ChaChaCha to task, I think, a little bit. He thought it was flippant.
It is flippant.
I think yeah.
It's sarcastic and cynical and flippant, and I meant all of it. I meant the sarcasm maybe more than any other part. I felt the way the protagonist in the song feels. That was true. But I also knew that was selfish and ridiculous. And I also knew that it was totally typical. It was what was expected of me as a believer. And every day I'd go to church, every day that I went to church, people would have these so personal requests of a deity, like, please help me get the money for my car, and my brother's, he's got the sniffles, and, Zeus, if you could come down from Olympus and bless this house. It's like, shut up. Like, just shoulder a little weight. But that's how I felt to me, personally. And I think that my own personal comeuppance to myself, it was like projection. Like, I felt that other people should feel that shame too. Like, you need to ask God for less, just in general. You know what I mean? Like, you should not have a request for an all-powerful, all-knowing being on the regular, let alone daily. You know what I mean? That's how I felt. Hence, ChaChaCha.
This is very interesting. And those things that you said are almost meaningful compared to the things I remember from high school, which are, let me get an A on this test, and
of course,
I hope that girl likes me too, or something like that.
Totally. Yep. The same page, man.
Speaking of the culture at the time, though, I feel like that, at least in the churches we were in, that was completely normal.
Yeah.
To have that many personal requests of God.
It was expected. Like, you get in the little circle, and you go around the circle, everyone's got one thing to add, and it's like, I hope the spaghetti tastes good tonight, Yeah,
if you didn't have one of those prayer requests, you were people thought you were
definitely. And so people would they would say those generic ones where it's like, I don't really have anything to ask for today, so I just want to pray for all the goodness in the world. I like the goodness, and also to condemn the badness. The badness is bad.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there in the circle, like thinking, okay, what am I going to say? Because they already took grapes, they already took this, they already took this, like, oh, shoot.
Like on The Price is Right, when everyone says like 99 cents, you're like, $1.05, Bob. Yeah.
Little notebook of things I can say during prayer.
Since we're talking terribly about the act of prayer, which I actually don't feel that negative about, by the way. I mean, clearly I'm not a believer anymore, but like, I don't have a whole bunch of like negative emotions stored up for people who believe, and I do believe that there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of powerful goodness in the Christian Bible and in religions in general. But since we're crapping on it, I really detested the language of prayer. When people would pray and they would start speaking with phrases that they would never use, except for and Jesus, I just want to say to you, I want to lift your name up today. Like, what does that mean? You're going to lift up a name? First, that's a God. You have no power to lift anything there. But that language just like flew under the radar. Everyone's like, yeah, because that's how we talk. That's how we do. This is the language of Jesus. Jesus wants you to speak that way. I didn't speak that way at all in my prayers. I would be like, dude, today's been crappy, and I think my transmission's going to go out, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So help, thanks, bye. Like, literally, that's how I would pray.
It was almost like a separate language. Dave Bazan from Pedro the Lion and
good band.
Some of the other bands. Yeah, of course. He's referred to it. I think he's called himself a non-practicing evangelical.
What the heck does that mean?
Because he said, you have non-practicing Jews, where he's like, I don't really believe it anymore, but I still speak that language.
Oh,
I understand what people mean when they use those phrases, even though I personally don't believe it.
I think that's a cool term. I get it. I see what he's done there. But
Yeah.
that reminds me of a trick that they used to pull back in the day, which was like when the band started trying to get away from it because, it was kind of becoming obvious that this whole scene was a little rotten on the inside. It was a little gilded, bands would start saying, "We're not a Christian band, we're Christians in a band." And like,
Right.
what the hell difference does that make? You're still on a Christian label, right? You're still making sure you don't say F-bombs, right? So there's no difference at all.
Nobody wanted to admit that, but I feel like the Christian label thing was the number one signifier. Like, if you're on a Christian label, you're on a Christian band. It doesn't matter what you say. Yeah. That's how everyone's going to receive it.
As long as you have one song right at the front. As long as you wear the shirt that says Jesus.
We're about to record an episode on Loudflower, and their one Christian song is in the middle of their album, so I don't know what.
Wow, they did it wrong, dude. they hit it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, what's the point of that? You just might as well not even put it on there.
It was the first single they released for the album, so they got that right.
See, there you go. That's how it's done.
Yeah. Who did the "Hey Stupid Kid, Life Ain't So Bad"?
Oh, that's me. I think I did all of the voices, and I did everything except for Eric Tokel's Gunslinger song.
Gunslinger, yeah.
Tell us about Aubrey's Fall.
It's the nutshell was that Aubrey was our friend, and she liked to party. We didn't have the word bros yet, but they were bros, and they were like the worst kind of bros. And we, like I said, we didn't have a name for that culture yet, but we all knew it sucked, and they weren't people that we wanted to be around. And Aubrey was very, very, very close to us. Like I legit considered her a sister, and I think she considered me a brother. And it was a real. We were scared for her. Like, we thought that she was hanging out with dudes that were too old for her to be hanging out with, and we were very worried about the behavior, going out on boats and partying really hard, and a lot of rumors. Like, who even knows, like, exactly how bad it was, or if it was not, maybe it wasn't bad at all. I guess we'll never know. But in the song I say, I can see on your face that you're better now. That's true. Like, she seemed to be less worried when she was outside that scene. And that's really all you need to know about that, is that it was a legitimate care for a friend and extending a hand to someone who seemed to be kind of drowning. And then we all got older, and it wasn't important anymore. And so, like, it begs the question, like, was it my job to be her dad? Like, in the song, I actually asked the question, like, looks like I'm your father now, which of course is sarcastic. I don't want to be. But, even then in the song, I'm saying, like, this is not supposed to be my job. Someone else should be doing this job,
But, we've all been that age, and yeah, everything seems like it's going to be the end of the world if it's not going right at that age.
She's turned out wonderful. I've never met her husband, but he looks like a really nice guy.
I was going to ask, did she hear the song?
Oh, yeah.
She recorded it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, was that awkward?
No, because, like, I'm not going to launch into things were different then, punk rock was new. Like, it was, but, like, it was about the most offensive thing that you could do with a microphone at the time. Like, it was music you played to clear a room, not to, like, invite a crowd. You know what I mean? And so I just said what I wanted to say. And, of course, that's not entirely true, because I did couch pretty much everything I said in metaphor. But when it was something that I could get away with saying, I was very clear and direct about it. And if it meant that I was not going to have her as a friend anymore, I would have been sad, but I also would have been surprised because it was super, super honest. And she knew that we had nothing but love for her. And she was at all of our shows. She cheered the loudest all of the time. And her younger brother was a huge fan too. Her parents heard it. Her parents were super awesome people. I said before, it looks like I'm your dad. Now, I don't mean to disparage her dad. Her dad's a freaking awesome person.
Glad it was received that way. That's really good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, plus like, it's not like she wasn't guilty of what we were talking about.
Right.
Like,
right.
She absolutely was. I don't know if that's like, it's not a crime or anything. You can leave the religion and go do whatever the hell you want. But if people are going to be like, hey, you're kind of being two-faced, well, are you? All
right. So on Sean's song, I'm not sure how the Johnny got his gun reference escaped probably either one of us, but it did. So why don't you let us into what the metaphor?
Yeah, we completely missed this.
Well, I mean, like if you don't snap on the hook, if you don't get it where the bait is, then the whole thing is just inscrutable. It's just gobbledygook.
Yeah.
But yeah, for listeners at home, it's Grandpa is the United States government, and his house is basically United States foreign policy. Everywhere the United States has their filthy, grubby hands, and people are trying to lift those white knuckles off their culture, that's when Johnny gets called to go and defend democracy and force what's best on people there at the end of a gun, And Johnny Got His Gun was a book by, I think, Dalton Trumbo. I think. But it's just brutal. I read that and became 100% anti-war for the rest of my life. And like people go, you don't understand. Wow. Like there's important No. This never needs to happen ever. It should not. I would rather die with a bullet in my chest than a gun in my hand. Easy. Yeah. So I read the book and I desperately wanted to make an anti-war song, and I did it in that metaphor.
That's great, because that was definitely not the culture at the time.
No, it was not.
You were going way against it.
And it was really fun to sing too, because all of my anger at the fact that like we're just carpet bombing Iraq at the time, right? And people are like, yeah, get those Arabs. I had so much loathing for the enthusiasm. And so I got to go on stage and just scream in people's faces that song, like so much rage. we played the 4th of July once, and I gave this speech about how disgusting the Star Spangled Banner is, because it's all about glorifying the bombs that are actually dropping on people. And then we have the audacity to light colorful rockets and go, oh, patriotism. And people, I gave that speech and it was dead silent. Like everyone was just looking at me agape. And then we went into our song.
And whether or not you get the reference, although once you get the reference, it actually becomes a very powerful song. But whether or not you get the reference, yeah, it's a incredibly enthusiastic and fun song, because I guess you put that enthusiasm into it, and it's even if you don't understand it, it is a fun song to rock out to.
Thank you. Sean Stopnick gets the credit. It's Sean's song because Stopnick wrote it. The music, okay. I mean, lefty guitarist, by the way. He had an interesting way of playing, because he had a funny knuckle that would rub on the strings. And so he had to play differently than one would play a guitar. And that led to him writing music around that.
So yeah, we were also very confused by the next song, Adam's Bomb, which I always enjoyed as a kid because it was about lighting things on fire and blowing things up, and as a kid, you do have that inner turmoil where you do want to see a little bit of destruction in the world, but we still miss what it was about.
Yeah, it was clearer at the time, and it was clearer when I was able to say, I saw it on TV on Beavis and Butthead, instead of, so what does parental guidance mean anyway? It was about Beavis and Butthead no longer being able to say fire, fire, because some kid lit his house on fire and they got sued. And so they were no longer allowed to say that. And I felt that was so unfair to art. It's like your art no longer gets to be art because someone over here isn't doing their job. And we're blaming you for that. And so this was a song all about a kid who goes up into his room and builds a bomb because his parents aren't paying attention to him, and he blows up the world. And the irony is that we did that all the time. Me and my buddy Ryan Pratt, who he ended up playing drums for a straight edge band called Show of Hands. We used to make bombs and blow them up like on the regular.
I probably was a little bit. I've actually never seen Beavis and Butthead my entire life because I was not allowed to watch it as a kid. And by the time I was able to watch it, I just didn't have any interest in it, you know. So yeah, a little bit more opaque to me.
Good show. Go get it. The best thing about Beavis and Butthead, they never talk about it, but like the cartoon was funny, right? And culturally significant. Yeah. But the best part was that they played it in between actual videos. So like you would see your MTV that day, and then here come these two idiots, and they would just tear these videos apart. So like, you know, like what you guys are doing, but like none of the positive stuff. Just like it was all negative all the time.
It's more fun that way.
It's way more fun that way. It was so cathartic because, you know, if you liked, you know, I hate to use the same example, but Dead Kennedys or something like that, you're never going to see them on MTV. They have a song called MTV Get Off the Air. You know what I mean? And so like, you get so tired of, oh, look, the new Guns N' Roses again. Oh, look, the new Eric Clapton again. And here these two guys are just like talking about everything that you hate about this pop culture nonsense. The fact that it's so shallow and meaningless. Highly recommended.
So Goodbye was one of my favorite songs in high school when this album came out, and it probably remains that way. Partly because it's a darker song, and there wasn't a lot of darker music, you know, available to the Christian market back then that I was immersed in. But this is another song that we I think we called Gross also, because it's another song about a guy telling a girl what she should do. Maybe
she was my second girlfriend ever. I think I was like 13 or 14, and she got real into drugs, like drug experimentation. And yeah, it was like, you should not do that. And she seemed real sad. And she's like, no, I'm fine. It's like, you're not though. Like, like, you know, I can point to a color and be like, that is blue. Like, you are blue. You are that shade of blue. And so that's all that was. That song was developed over years, and so the lyrics weren't, they were never really nailed down.
The Last Voyage of Sir Patrick Spence, which is a personal favorite of mine also. Had you read the song before? You said that you were just flipping through your textbook. Had you read the ballad before that?
I had read it before. I don't remember if it was a high school assignment or if I had just read it on my own. I think probably I had just read it on my own. But yeah, when I was sitting in the practice room and Jason were playing it, and I was like, God, this is awesome. Also, it sounds like, and I flipped through I just happened to have my like homework bag with me, and I'm like, it sounds like this, and it fit perfectly. Yep, least amount of work I ever did.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. In my high school band, that's what our lead singer would do with my journals.
Oh, really? The thing about Spens though was it doesn't rhyme properly unless you mispronounce things. Like a tear blinded his E instead of I, Yeah. There's a couple parts in there. I think I actually mispronounced one of the words because I didn't, for the life of me, know what it actually was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Me either that time. I remember when I did it when I recited it in high school, I did as much research as I could on how the words were pronounced, but it was still impossible.
Yeah.
We actually know a lot more about Middle English these days than we did about it then.
Yeah, dude, the internet's an amazing thing. It's remarkable what you can do when all of a sudden people can communicate with one another. Like this.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
I was so sad when you mentioned that like rainy days and homecoming, like they're just awful search terms. And it's super true. They are.
Yeah. It's really hard to find.
And there are like 5 bands now called Rainy Days.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I work for an independent music distributor called Octave, and I write press releases for bands. And every time I get an artist and they're like, my name is DJ A, and my album is called B. I'm like, you are never going to sell anything because no one will ever be able to find you. It's really sad.
Unsearchable.
This is my new single called I Love You, Baby.
Exactly. Yeah, we definitely struggled to look up stuff.
Yeah. And it's weird, because I think a lot of bands that formed in the mid-90s had this problem because as we went into the 2000s, all of a sudden you needed to be searchable, and so many bands were not.
Dude, like honestly, Rainy Days was not my pick. What happened was I was in English class and I wrote down on a piece of notebook paper, between every blue line, I wrote 3 band names, and there were like 10 columns. So I mean, we're talking like hundreds of band names. And most of them sucked, but some of them I rather liked. And I thought like all of them were better than Rainy Days. But we went through the whole thing, and the ones that people were just like, no, I crossed it out. And then we ended up with like 3 or 5, and the band voted on Rainy Days. I'm like, okay.
That's how you get the least offensive thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Designed by committee. So The Gunslinger is an interesting song because the lyrics in the song have nothing to do with the lyrics printed on the sheet.
Oh,
and we didn't say that on our episode, but I was talking to Clifton after it, and he was like, wait a minute, I just realized this is completely different.
They have my lyrics in the book?
Yes.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So I actually, because they're a little bit hard to read in the book, I typed out all the lyrics for the entire album before we started reviewing it.
Is it the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed?
Yeah. It's the Gunslinger, yeah.
Wow. So like the part where Eric Tokel, where it really comes in and he comes in, like that was supposed to be, it was just the Gunslinger from the book, but I had printed it all out so that it could be like said real quick, like staccato, you know what I mean? But it was faster in the studio than I realized it was in my head. Like they had recorded it faster than we usually played it. So I just couldn't get the words out. Like it didn't work that way.
That's so easy to fix these days. You just slow down the song and recording, and you speed up the vocals later.
I was close. I was this close to pulling it off, but it was also like the end of the week, and dude, like going into the studio and belting out punk rock for like a solid 8 hours for like 5 days, like it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. And then you start failing, right? And that's more exhausting, like trying to do it and just failing. So finally it was just like, dude, just keep that.
So recording's like wrapping Burnout all up in 1 week. That's really nice.
So did Eric actually say anything, or is it just gobbledygook that he's saying?
Both. He did actually say things. Like he's like, get him on back and round him on up and shoot him and shoot him and shoot him and shoot him. I don't know everything he says.
Yeah.
It was the wrong decision. We did it because it was funny. Like, I personally wanted to make a punk rock album, and I did everything I could. You mentioned that one of the songs is 280 beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we practiced, I would tell the guys, I'm like, that's not fast enough. It has to be faster. It's not correct. Like it's not correct unless it's faster than that. And so, I guess that's my comeuppance there. was it got too fast for me.
They got too fast for you. Very good lesson.
But yeah, he's saying things. When he goes into like the Spanish speaking portion, I'm like, geez.
Yeah.
¿Qué es frijoles?
That
¿Qué
gets
es
a little-
frijoles? ¿Cómo están las chicas?
So you said you do you ever listen to your own stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes. Like,
All right.
sometimes you get a hankering.
Yeah.
And like it means a lot more to me than it does to anyone else because I had the experience. I remember being there. Like all of the art is attached to a memory, like many memories, But like 15 minutes, like that's the 15-minute song on that record.
Mm-hmm.
That song happened because we were in the studio and they're like, well, we still have like another 5 minutes on the LP. Like, do you have anything else? And we're like, this is not a problem we expected to have. And so we sat around and like Eric and Luis, they're like, the answer should not be no. Like you should have something else. And so Jason and me and the other Jason, we all worked out a song and in 15 minutes. And we wrote it and recorded it in 15 minutes. And that's why it's called 15 minutes. Like everything from like nothing to a thing happened within 15 minutes.
Wow. I mean, there's only 2 songs, similar between the demo and the album that carry over. Why did you not record any of the songs from the demo?
That wasn't my choice. I think that Monkeys Don't Wear Shoes should have been on there because just that was a dumb pop song. I think that's probably why it didn't go on there because it didn't mesh with like the rest of the high art we were doing. But it was a very popular song.
The album does have a feel to it, and it does stay true to that feel.
I think so. I don't know. Someone accused me of not having a very good growly voice, and that is entirely true. And the reason why that's there was because I was just trying to not sound like anyone else. And it's like people would be like, "You sound like Jello Biafra," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do, don't I? I don't like that. I want to have my own thing." Right. And then I would do like the growly thing just because I listened to a lot of grunge, and it's like I don't want to do that either. But like these are the voices that come out of me when I open my mouth and sing,
Tell us a little bit I want to hear your overall thoughts on it now, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about the layout of the album because they clearly spent some money on it. It's multiple pages. You've got the photos of all the band members looking like they're like waiting at the door. Isn't that
cool?
A date
I love that.
Like that.
It is.
Yeah.
Correct.
Whose idea was that? How did that all come about?
Feltman was kind of the band manager. I don't even know why I say kind of. He was the band manager. He did all of the booking. He did all of the business stuff. And I think him and Jason Fleetwood went to Frontline and worked all that out with their art people. I didn't have any say on any of that. But I remember it meant a little bit more if you were a fan at the time because our stage thing was that we all wore suits. And that partially came because I wore a suit to school my senior year. It was just how I dressed. I thought it looked nice. The swing thing was happening. Aubrey was my swing partner, by the way. We danced swing. It was a lot of fun. That's a whole different thing. But I was always in a suit. And so I was like, you guys should put on suits. And so we all wore suits all the time. And then we had the homecoming thing. And it's like, well, that's pretty intuitive. Like, we'll all wear our suits and we'll be going to homecoming. And then, hey, what if the booklet has us picking up our homecoming dates? And then the cover will be us sad because our dates aren't there. That's the whole thing. Fun trivia there is that the dude who did the art didn't care very much about scale. So if you imagine any of us on that bench in the gym standing up, they would be like 10 feet tall. Like judging by the basketball hoop.
So after the album, the only thing we ever heard again from Rainy Days was the Pied Piper song on Skinctified, which I incorrectly said it was on Underground 101 in the episode, but I realized afterwards that I had messed it up. It is Skinctified.
Yeah, Skinctified. Pretty good record too.
Yeah, great compilation. And the Pied Piper song is a great song. I think it's a lot of fun, a lot of energy. What happened?
What happened was what I said earlier, just like not being religious anymore, and it was just living a lie, and I was not okay with that. Yeah, I had to leave the church to get honest.
Wow.
Yeah. I understand.
But we were in a studio with a guy named Nate Thorpe, and he was a great dude. He was learning how to do the old school legitimate like 26 channel soundboard studio thing, and he had the studio in his garage, and he was doing a fairly decent job at it. But we couldn't keep a lead guitarist to save our lives. We went through so many talented people from all over the place. This guy, Joby Harris, played with a band called Fatso on the East Coast, and he played with us for a long time. John Caro, also from the Stairwell Bloodshed crew, he played bass for us. He was on the Skanktified compilation, in fact. That's really when we came together. Was it like Jeff Jackway was an awesome person. I love him to death, but he wasn't a bass player. And so like he did a fine job. I love everything he did. I have nothing bad to say about that. But John Caro was legitimately like, he had been playing bass since he was like 9. And so that was a whole different thing.
I remember when Skanktified came out, and I was surprised to find Rainy Days on there, and I listened to the song. In fact, I skipped straight to it because I was like, oh my God, there's a Rainy Day song on here.
Misattributed too.
Yes.
It says it's not up. Like I think we got the next song or whatever.
Yeah, there was a weird thing where there's actually like a cutout on the packaging where there's a whole song missing. Yeah, where something happened there. I don't know what happened, but
whatever.
But yeah, I did find the song and listen to it, and it was very good, and I was excited. I mean, because it's a very good energy and a very, it's definitely Rainy Days, but it's definitely a progression of Rainy Days.
Yeah.
So I was It
was a solid like 2 years, I think, after the record.
Oh wow.
Well, I mean, feels like that. It might not have been.
Yeah, I mean, probably so, because Homecoming was 96 and Skanktified probably came out in late 98 or early 99.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, 2-3 years. I mean, we were definitely like way professional by then. Like we had our own thing going on. We had like the merch booth. The coolest thing we ever did was not any of the album or any of the music. The coolest thing we ever did was our merch booth, because someone got the bright idea. Jeff's mom worked at an embroidery factory, and we went to a wholesaler, like a vintage store, but it wasn't a vintage store. It was like anyway, a big warehouse full of trash, like clothes that are just being thrown out. And we bought huge trash bags for like $1 a bag. And then we gave them all to Jeff's mom to just embroider Rainy Days on them. And so we go to these shows, and everyone would have like, oh, this is my t-shirt. This is my new t-shirt. And here's the old t-shirt. We had like a full vintage store with like all like dresses and umbrellas and hats and like skirts and button-down shirts and polo shirts and sweaters. Like people are like going through the rack, It's so fun.
That's actually a really good idea.
That's what we were doing around the Skanktified time. Like a lot had transpired between the album and then. We were much more professional.
So were you planning on recording a second album?
Oh yeah, like at Nate Thorpe Studios, we had like 75% of a record done, and it kind of all fell apart when the band fell apart, when we couldn't keep a guitarist to save our lives. We ran out of people. It's crazy too when you think about it. Like that's not why people break up. There's always another guitarist, right? Nope.
Huh.
Nope. Like you can run out. It's a thing that can happen.
the flyers at the music store didn't work anymore?
Absolutely not. That's actually a crucial part of the puzzle, I think, is like the scene died. The scene died. It dried up.
Yeah.
And you could go to Vinyl Solution in Huntington Beach, which is our punk rock record store, and you could put a flyer up, but the calls wouldn't come. I mean, we'd all just be guessing, but personally, I think it's because of the popification. Like as far as
possibly so.
As far as Rainy Days is concerned, like the real reason we couldn't find a guitarist is because we played punk rock. And it wasn't in anymore. And it wasn't in anymore because of all of the, sorry guys, but the MXPXs of the world. Like that standard pop punk put me on the radio punk made it crappy to be like, I'm in a punk band. It's like people would automatically presume that you were a 3-piece Canadian band. You know? It sucked. It was embarrassing. And it's like, no, we play real punk rock, I promise.
Right, yeah.
And then, of course, the double whammy. It was like, also we're on a Christian label.
Yeah, oops.
Wait, what? You're a Christian what?
I hadn't thought about that. You are signing on to a lifestyle when you do that, aren't you? When you join that band.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, are those recordings out there anywhere? You said you got 75% of the album done?
I have the actual studio recordings are not.
Bummer.
They would probably be on like DAT tape, even if they were. I have some stuff on cassette, but I haven't been able to put it into digital. I have a KUCI show from that time, and I tried hooking it up to my computer and recording it, but it peaks, and I haven't found a way to transfer it off the cassette. Those are good songs, though. We had a song called 1984 in Huntington that I love so much. It's such a cool song.
Almost just the way my waist let cowboy. When do we get so home? When do we make the home? I'm gonna tell my son, and we live now we're done. I wanna pass the dawn, and now it's time to go. Now they'll like all my stuff in the place to home. Then we can't go home. Then we can't go.
So my other question, so for you personally, what, like, kind of what happened after that? What happened after Rainy Days ended? What'd you do?
I tried to put together a punk band that was not religious, and I had a problem because all of the guys that I knew who were good at music were all still in the scene and not doing very well because the scene was dying, like thrashing within an inch of its life, and that's basically it. Plus, you know, I was like 21, 22 at the time. I went to hair school. I was like doing hair, which is like a whole different world. And then I went to college. It's just there wasn't any room for it anymore. Like, I'm a writer first, which like never comes up in interviews like this. But like that's what I've been doing my whole life is writing. I've written books. Cool. I can't publish one to save my life. But like, yeah. No, the thing I'm trying to publish right now is the Agnostic Bible, believe it or not. And it's legitimately an agnostic Bible.
Like an agnostic take on the Bible, or
no, it's a Bible for agnosticism. But which I bring up because like you just have to cut something out sometimes. Like you can't be a musician and a writer and a teacher, which is another thing that I do is teaching English, and now parenting. You know, like I have a guitar. I haven't played it in 6 years because kids and work, and you just have to stop doing a thing sometimes, and it's okay. But our friends, they have a studio and they have instruments, and they desperately want to get a band together with me, and I won't do it because it's like I said before, this is what happens. You write a song, then you play a song, you get good at the song, and then you write another song, and then you get an album, you get a set, and you go to shows, and then you get fans, and you get shirts, and you go tour, and it's like, if all of that isn't following getting together to play music, then I don't want to get together to play music. Like, that's what it's for. You know what I mean? Yeah. If there's not going to be screaming fans in it, I'm not interested. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. So you're not the Sean McCauley of Oliver House, and I have to apologize for that.
I am not. But I mean, you know, much like Rainy Days and Homecoming, Sean McCauley is not exactly going to lead you right to me either.
I made a bad assumption that there was only one Sean McCauley that made music in the area, so that's my fault.
There's a Major League Baseball player, and there's a
But as I said earlier, the song that you recorded, that's just you and an acoustic guitar, I really liked, and I've passed it on to my wife. I think she'll really like that.
Thanks.
It has a little bit of a Irish drinking song sound to it, whether or not that was purposeful, but yeah.
Yeah, 100% intended. Yeah.
Okay.
On the western coast of purgatory, a slimy, rotten, stinking story of blasphemy against art itself unfolds. The traveling hippies still sing out their songs, and the struggling beat writers still write out their own lamentation. Well, our frustration is spitefully told. Well, the people are angry and artless, no creativity to brownish their souls, how they live without crying out. I'll never know. The line is drawn, the line's defended, the line is drawn, and we're offended with a prejudice he may not understand. Why the footballers played in a band when they could have used computers? without voices you'll rock out to nothing. All the artists for comfort have sold on the fledglings are crashing in towering capitalist mountains of gold. Without voices you'll rock out to nothing. All the artists for comfort have sold on the fledglings are crashing in towering capitalist mountains of gold. You bet your ass.
I do have more solo songs that I just recorded, like on my, just so that I have them recorded. I can send you those just for
cool.
poops and giggles. But it's not like a band or anything. It's
Sure.
I
appreciate it.
I would send it to people and be like, look, this is my material. I'd rather it be our material. Can we get a thing together? But it never materialized.
Yeah.
But you can hear what I sound like when I'm not doing Christian music. Some of it's even angrier, believe it or not. Actually, I think all of it is angry.
Good. I like angry stuff. So you write? Do you do any other art?
No, just writing. Just writing. And I did photography.
Yeah.
My first major was photography.
Oh, nice.
I got first place at the fair one year.
Nice.
It's a fun art too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess one thing I do want to ask you too is thinking back on the scene at that time in the Christian scene, like, you know, Clifton and I, in doing this podcast, we kind of made a list of albums that we kind of want to revisit, and we know some we know are going to be terrible. Others we have fond memories of. They may seem terrible now. Some we think still hold up. But like, do you have any albums you think back on that like were really important to you at the time?
I didn't listen to Christian music at the time, but to play the game fair, I listened to it all of the time because I was always playing shows, and you play with other bands. You know what I mean? That was so cool, man. Like I saw so many good shows from backstage. Really, really cool experience. You get to you don't usually get to see art from that perspective, you know? Like neither are you on stage performing, nor in the audience, nor part of the crew. You just know them. So you get to sit back there and just watch the whole thing unfold. It was really, really, really cool. And I would suggest the Focused Bow record was really, really good. You know the one I mean? The hardcore album?
Yeah.
That was really strong. Plank Guy's first record I liked a lot at the time. That one with the Luis Garcia bass riff.
Slapping that bass all around?
That was strong. We had a lot of fun. We played with them once, one of those coffee shop shows. We played at this place called Muddy's, and it was the size of your bathroom. It was really, really small. And no one cared. Like everyone was just losing their hearing with every beat of the snare. But they played one of those shows for us. That was really cool. Five Iron Frenzy were both kind of like overrated and not rated highly enough. They put on such a good show. But anyway, I thought they were really good. The Supertone Strikes Back record was really strong. Unashamed stuff was great. What I liked about Jeff Jackway's band was they were so hardcore. Like there was so much emotion behind those songs. That was what was the real Christian one that they did? The one that was it was like a hymnal.
Wait, what's it?
What was it? I forget. It was something that you would sing at like church youth group.
They did Awesome God.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Dude, seeing them perform that as an encore was like one of the most intense things I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of music live, and like, dude, like mountains of kids like climbing one another, like King of the Hill, with like Jackway at the top with the mic and everyone singing the song. It was really intense. That was great. I loved Unashamed. They were strong.
Mountains of Kids is a great visual, by the way.
Dude, it was literal. Like literally. Like the cover of the 10 album by Pearl Jam where they're like all reaching. But like imagine if people from the audience just kept climbing up toward that. It's exactly what it looked like all of the time. Other Christian stuff that I really liked. I really liked this band on the East Coast that went nowhere, and they were called The Pirates. Thee. And
oh yeah, they were on
They were on one of those comps, right?
They were on the comp of the time, which was I'm your biggest fan.
Oh, you know 'em.
You're right.
We got along
Just that
really
one
well with
song.
them.
Cool.
If I remember, I think it was that band, but if I remember right, on a lark when we went touring up to Washington State, we switched band members. I think it was that band. And like Jason Fleetwood and their guitarist just like changed and played like a whole show of the other guy's music.
Very nice. Yeah, they're on I'm your biggest fan. They're one of the standout kind of silly songs. There's some standout serious songs and there's some standout silly songs. They're probably the best silly song on that album.
Oh, the Huntingtons too. The Huntingtons were great.
Oh.
We got along with them very well
Yeah.
also. Except Sean Stopnick and Cliff did not.
Really?
Because they were like legitimate punk rocker guys, and like Sean got up at a restaurant, at like the hotel restaurant where we were all staying. Sean got up to go to the salad bar, and Cliff sat down and started eating his food next to Sean's girlfriend, and Sean came back and like he saw no comedy in this transaction at all. And, like hated each other for. Well, actually, I think it was all Sean. Sean just hated Cliff from then on, which made it funnier.
Yeah, the Huntingtons were good guys. We hosted them in College Station 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Yeah. They just put out a new album like last year.
Really?
Yeah, you
Yes.
should look it up. It's on Spotify.
And I'm sitting here thinking, how many combinations can you make out of these chords?
Yeah, but they did it. It's not bad.
Their label wanted to sign us around the time that we broke up. They were shopping us.
Flying Tart?
Is it? I don't remember. But we had.
Yeah. Flying Tart's one of my favorite records from that record labels from that time.
If Sean had not hated Cliff so much, I think we would have signed with that label. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Like if Cliff had not done that, then our whole futures would have been different potentially.
Speaking of labels, and this is a question we might have mentioned on the podcast. Was there ever any interest with Tooth and Nail?
I mean, yeah. Like if you go to Tooth and Nail, then you get rich. You know, like Tooth and Nail. Our label was on the verge of closing. We didn't know. Are you familiar with the other Alarma band, A Few Loose Screws? They did like grunge rock. Yeah. Okay, so we went to Bushnell with them, like Caravan, and the label didn't have enough money to get us all home, and they sent us home, and I think they were just stranded there.
Oh my god!
Yeah, like we got the phone call. Wow. We finished performing at Cornerstone, and our A&R rep got the phone call. He's like, "It's all over, guys." They're like, "Yep, time to go home." I'm like, no, it's all over. They're like, what? They're like, what about the Few Loose Screws guys? And it was just like,
wow.
What?
Be thankful I chose you.
So you were labelless as well after that point.
Basically. Yeah, we did not have a label by December of '96.
It makes me wonder what happened with them financially, because I felt like they put out some really good records in the 90s.
No clue.
I don't.
I never saw them again.
Huh.
Good guys, though.
They fired Brandon Ebel.
No, I'm joking. My complaint with the Tooth and Nail thing is much like my complaint about punk rock on the radio. And also there was this guy, DLB, Dave Bonson. He was the big promoter in Southern California. He put on all the shows. And one of our big songs that was going to be on the next record was called Dabbed and Killed the Scene.
Dude, Bonson, you listening to this? Where are you, Tooth and Nail? Everybody's going to go for too much. And the right will put it back. We'll put it back. We'll put it back. We'll put it back. Back. And then they kill the scene. 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 500 bucks to cover the monopoly control.
And it was 100% true. He charged so much for like a ska band. Yeah, like the shows went from being like $3, $5, like tops, like 12. They went to being like they went to like $20 shows. Like kids don't have that kind of money, and they're just
12 is too much.
12 is too much.
Yeah,
12 is too much. You know, especially in like 1995. You know,
that will kill a scene. Understand?
Yep, and that's exactly what happened. He was the only guy you could call to get the supertones if you wanted them, and if you wanted them, you had to make sure that you could guarantee like a few $1,000s. It's ridiculous.
Any other memories of the Rainy Days time? I mean, good, bad, anything stand out in your mind? Shows, touring?
Yeah,
I mean, just anything.
Like, yeah, well, I mean, endless. I'll probably think of something really great later. I don't have anything on the tip of my tongue right now.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But we played KUCI a lot.
Years.
That was wonderful. Yeah, it's been a long time. I don't take any of it back. Like if someone were like, would you rather be dead right now or would you rather like erase your memories of having done that? It would be a hard decision. Like that's not something people get to do, you know? And it was important. It was crucial to me. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't get to perform the way I felt. Like the music was good. The music saved me. Like not listening to Christian music is how I said earlier I had to leave the church to get honest. You know, that's 100% true. It's 100% true. And I was a dishonest person and I didn't know it until I left. Yeah. And I was able to get out because I was listening to Bad Religion, who was asking real questions, like with songs like Faith Alone. You know, Faith Alone isn't good enough anymore. I need answers to these actual problems that are haunting my life. And and playing in Rainy Days let me explore my own questions. I one of the main things that got me out of the religion also was I took lyrics from a song and brought them to my youth minister. He couldn't answer the questions, so he sent them to the big church minister, and he couldn't answer the questions, so he sent them to like, I don't even know what that guy's business was, but he took a book off of the shelf, like a lawyer's shelf full of books, and it was Evidence That Demands a Verdict by a very famous writer, McDowell.
Yeah,
and
McDowell.
And it was legitimate argumentation, but like upper division theosophy. And I was like, this is your response? Like you hand me a bunch of evidence, like, no, we're positive everything that we say is correct because of this book. And I'm like, but you can't answer the stupid question. So if it weren't for Rainy Days, I think that I would be an entirely different person. And maybe I'd like myself, maybe I wouldn't, but I'm really, really happy I am who I am today. And Rainy Days was utterly crucial to that, for sure. Yeah. So when you ask me if I have any particular memory, like the whole thing was, it was the number one, and all of the other numbers that make me up are built out of that one number.
Yeah. Well, that is a fantastic positive note to end this talk on, I think.
Yeah. Agreed. That's a great answer. We call this "Your Music Saved Us" because we're kind of playing on that phrase, but I agree with you somewhat. Like this music, of this whole scene at the time, like, while I don't relate to the lyrical content of a lot of it now, it opened my eyes to stuff that was positive, and even just like being exposed to different styles of music that I would never have been exposed to otherwise opened, me for things later that I do still like and really appreciate. So not the same as being in a band, but I completely kind of think I understand what you're saying.
It's similar.
Grateful for it.
Yeah. And it provided community for us, where I think
totally.
as people who probably didn't fit into that church culture quite as well as a lot of people, it just provided community. We knew other people were out there doing the same thing, listening to the same album.
It's legitimate culture. Yeah. I mean, we were attracting people that we wanted, and we were excluding people too, you know? Like it wasn't a better or worse culture, but it was definitely its own culture. It should not be discounted. It should definitely be examined like you good gentlemen do.
All right, Sean. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
No, it's been a blast. Thanks for having me. It's nice to remember all of those things because they were crazy. They were a lot of fun.
Well, sing it. I want to hear everybody sing it now. Come on, let's go. Everybody, wanna hear ya? Everybody, sing along. Everybody sing that song. We said, we are broken hearted. 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 We are broken hearted.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Music Saved Us.
If you enjoyed your time with us, please leave us a review or share this episode on the social media of your choice, where you can probably follow us at Your Music Saved Us or email us at yourmusicsavedus@gmail.com.
The music in this episode is the work of Rainy Days and or Sean McCauley and is used with apologies, not permission. Which isn't exactly true because he sent it to us.
Perfect.